I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to our nerdiest thing. Today, we're going to be discussing our favorite books where the villain gets the girl. So, you know, lots of spoilers because we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you
what happens in the end.
Yeah, like the ending of these books. So just be aware of that. Before we get into all of that, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Well, I'm super excited because tonight Mindy came up with our cocktail and we get a shot and a cocktail.
Yeah, overachiever, two drinks.
I think Whitney's really excited about that because me and Mindy are going to be blubbering at the end of the episode. And she's going to have to ask our producer to clean it up.
Please help.
But the shot is called Budget Batman and the drink is called Blunder Barbie. It's from our Leather and Lark reads. So if you listen to Thursday's episode, you can learn more, or you can visit ournerdiestthing.com or Instagram at ournerdiestthing for the recipes.
I just now made the connection of the colors of the drinks.
I did not make the connection of the colors.
That
was on purpose.
Just did that, Mindy. Good job.
If you're watching our YouTube thing, the Budget Batman is dark brownish black, and then Blunder Barbie is like a really cute little pink, which I don't think I've ever seen Mindy make something cute and pink before. She's definitely more into retro colors. Yeah, so
cute and mid-century modern is usually Mindy style.
Red, teal. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and do our shot. And again, you can watch this on YouTube if you want to, but if not, just give us a second.
This feels like a lot of pressure.
Cheers. All right,
you guys know I've never taken shots other than when we went to the distillery, the Hell Fireplace.
I know you know how to swallow, so just put it in your mouth. You take it. Don't sip it, Whitney. Don't lick the vein. Don't lick the tip. Just put it in your mouth and
don't lick the tit or the tip.
The tip.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Well, if Robbie's got a tit down there.
That's its pet name.
Hey, little tit. How you doing?
I hope he doesn't listen to this.
I feel like you say that every episode now. Me and Mindy have desensitized you.
He hasn't been driving as much.
So my sweet Whitney is taking her first shot tonight. That's your nerdiest thing of the week.
Yeah, I know.
All right, go.
That was good. That was so good.
I really liked it.
Which one of you hates coffee?
Oh, no, I like coffee. We all like coffee.
Why do I always think one of you doesn't like coffee?
Darren doesn't like coffee.
Because that tasted like a really good espresso.
That was amazing, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was vodka and Kahlua.
It's really good.
Oh, man.
It was really good.
It did burn a little. Poor Whitney, your eyes are watering. She's like, I did it, you guys.
Yeah, I'm proud of myself. Actually, the flavor is quite nice. It's just it burns a little bit going down. But it was
should. It's working.
At least it doesn't burn when you pee.
Well, time will tell. It's still early in the night, I guess.
I know my shot glasses were dusty, but you're not going to get an STD from them.
I washed them.
Well, thank you so much for that. Well, that brings us to our nerdy news.
I actually have some nerdy news this week.
Yay!
So Stefanie Blais, who we've had on our podcast, we did an interview with her. She's amazing. She does a great series, a hockey series, of course. And it's set in the 80s, 90s. So this one is the third one in the series. It's called the Merrimack Mavericks.
Miss
That's
Mary
hard to say.
Mac all dressed in black. Did you guys sing that growing up?
Oh, yes.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a friends to lovers romance, and it's called Your Love. And her books are so cool because the chapter titles are all like songs from that era.
Oh, nice.
It's very cool.
So I know the first book that we talked about with her was set in the 80s, and now this one's set in the 80s and 90s. So is it going like, does she go in like, are all of her books going to eventually like catch up to modern time? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know about that. I know they definitely go like in a timeline. So the couple in the second one was in the first one. You saw them, and then it's like after that.
It would make sense because then if she does like their kids and stuff.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Which a lot of the hockey romances are doing now, and the mafia romances.
We'll have to ask her when we see her in Charleston.
I know.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
less than Low Country in March.
No, that'll be here sooner rather than later.
I know, it's sneaking up on us.
I know, it really is.
So there aren't a lot of books coming out the week that this episode releases, with the exception of that one. I mean, there are books coming out, but not the books that we normally recommend. But on October 21st, you can get The Road to Ruin by Elle Mitchell. This is the second book in the Gods of Tomorrow duet. And I don't really want to talk about the plot because there's no way to do it without spoilers. I haven't read the first book, and I read the synopsis for this, and I was like, well, shit. Yeah. But just go read Elle Mitchell, you all. Yeah. You won't regret it. She's amazing. Just go get it. But you do want to read the first book in this duet before you read this one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And apparently before you read the blurb about it.
Yeah. I mean, it did mess up something, but I was going to read it anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, it happens sometimes. Is that all our nerdy news?
It is, but don't worry. Next week I'll have tons.
It's a slow week this week.
It's a light.
It is.
But it all evens out in the end.
Yes.
That brings us to our nerdy and dirty. Let's talk about what we're reading. What are you guys reading?
I'm finally reading Goldfinch, which I'm so excited about. It's going slow because I bought these new gummies that are like knocking me out. I'm reading like 5 pages, you all. And then I'm like, what was Slade saying? But I'm really loving watching all the character arcs come together. Like the evil bitch Kayla was just in a scene, and we've already seen Queen Melina, and like it's really, really been fun. So, but I wanted to tell the listeners to be on a lookout because we have an interview with Raven Kennedy coming up, which I'm so excited about.
Soon and very soon.
She's so nice. And she told me she has listened to the episodes of her book. And even if she didn't mean it, it was really nice of her to say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
I never would have expected an author to do that.
No,
not at all.
Mindy, what are you reading?
Well, I just finished a book that Deb has been asking me to read for a long time. And I'm so glad I did. It's called Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. And she had talked about it a lot.
Oh, it's so good.
And it is amazing. It's worth it. I don't know why I waited so long. Probably because I had 8,000 arcs. I don't know. But it was so good. It's so beautiful and so poetic. And for like a horror, like a psychological horror, basically. But it's also a romance. And it works so beautiful, and it works so well together.
I kept going back and rereading passages when they would describe the artwork and the poetry that the boys write in the book, because I would be like, oh my gosh. But I read that like 6 months ago, and it doesn't come out until the 29th, and I'm so jazzed for it to finally come out, because it's gotten like a huge amount of pre-orders.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
I can't wait. One of the pre-orders is mine. I need my trophy now that I really liked it.
So that one I did finish, and then I started another arc. I was kind of excited because now all the Christmas arcs are coming out.
Yeah.
So I got one by Rachel Kay. It's called The Christmas Fake. And it's obviously a fake dating. Yeah.
I was hoping it wasn't fake orgasms.
Yeah. So I just started it. I'm not really into it, but so far so good.
Awesome. Well, I read 2 very different books from each other. One was another memoir, if you'll recall last week. Wasn't the best. This one was much better. I read Sure, I'll Join Your Cult by comedian Maria Bamford. It was really, really
that
good.
was written for you.
I know, it really was.
Not because you're going to join a cult, because you're so...
I probably would, though. I'm one of those people.
I do want to say that was sent to us by Gallery Books, so
yes,
thank you so much for sending us a copy.
It was great. She basically... It's her memoirs, but she's writing it about basically her life with mental illness. She has OCD and intrusive thoughts, and has since she was a child. And she talks about dealing with that and how different anonymous support groups have helped her throughout her life. She's joined, she says, like every anonymous support group that you could think of, like Debtors Anonymous and Couples Anonymous, and like all kinds of these groups. And that's kind of the framework of her memoir. It's really, really good. She, it's a dark book. There's a lot of trigger warnings. She focuses on some really intense mental health struggles. She details 3 different inpatient mental health treatments that she has experienced, and her experiences with suicidal ideation. So there's trigger warnings with that. But at the same time, I laughed out loud every single chapter. It was so funny, and it didn't feel super dark and heavy because she is so funny. She would just throw in these like one-liner jokes in parentheses after saying something like kind of intense, and I would just laugh out loud and be like, this is such a great fun read. It was really cool.
It sounds like she did it too without minimizing
100%.
what she went through.
Yeah. She bring. I mean, I think it's just because that's her personality, right? Like she's a comedian, so she's just funny. Like she doesn't have to try to be funny. She just is, and that's just kind of how the story plays out too. Like she's very real with what she has gone through, but at the same time she's just a funny person, and so she just throws these things in there that really keep it flirty, keep it breezy.
I think a lot of people who have mental illness, well, not a lot, but just some people use humor as a coping mechanism. I mean, I know I do.
Sure, yeah.
I'm like one of those people that like I'm afraid to go to a funeral because I'm the one that's going to crack a joke.
Yeah. Or like giggle. A quiet
and I'm like,
for the record, I went to the funeral of your family member and your husband was teasing me about looking like I was goth. So you're not the only one that does it.
And I probably was making jokes at, my family member's funeral too. Yeah. And I mean, it's for me, humor is what keeps me from the downward spiral. So I think a lot of that
coping.
happened. Yeah,
sure.
Coping mechanism.
One thing I really liked about her book too is that she did different visual cues when she had a graphic, like a little picture. I think it was a lightning bolt when she was like, "I'm going to break the anonymity of this anonymous support group." But when she talked about the more intense trigger warning stuff, the text looks different in the book than the whole rest of the book does.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's very clear that, hey, I'm going to talk about something a little more intense, and you can just skip over that if you want to, which she says at the very beginning of the book, kind of in the prologue or introduction, which I really appreciated, because
that's really smart.
Like some people, like, I want to read your book, but I don't need to read all the details.
Well, it's a little different when it's a memoir too, because it's not fiction,
right?
And so I really appreciate.
Sometimes it makes it feel heavier when though they actually experience that,
right?
Which I thought it was great, a very easy way to be able to skip over that without accidentally like, oh, I didn't want to read this part. It was a very clear separation of text, which I really liked that a lot. It was really good. And then the second book that I read is very different from this memoir, but also a really great read. I read Not in Love by Elle Hazelwood, which Deb, you talked about before.
Yeah.
I really liked it a lot. I agree very much. At the very beginning of the book, she says, if you've read my other books, this book is different. It's not really like a rom-com. It's
a lot of smut.
She calls it an erotic romance, and I was like, yes,
it was, and it was good.
It is. It's so good. So it feels a little bit darker or a little bit heavier, I guess, a little bit more serious, a little bit less fun, but it was still really, really good. The spice is fantastic. And there's still that like insta love, insta lust, meant to be happily ever after kind of vibe. That was a 5-star read.
You know what I really liked about that book is that the female main character, I mean, this isn't too much of a spoiler, but she has never had an orgasm with penetrative sex. And they focus a lot on the intimacy of non-penetrative sex.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. And the fact that Elle Hazelwood made it so hot.
Yeah, oh, yeah. 100%.
I mean, they do eventually, but like for a while they don't. And I'm like, damn.
Before we were recording, I was telling Mindy, I read this book recently and I can't remember which one it was where, I can't have an orgasm. Are you going to cure me with your magic dick? And it was definitely this.
He does have a magic
and he does.
Oh, that's funny.
And she loves every second of it. But yeah, that's what I'm reading. 5-star read for Not in Love. 4-star read for me for sure, I'll join your cult. I enjoyed it. So what are you guys watching? Last week, not all of us had anything that we were watching.
Did you tell us what you were reading?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. See, I
already forgot what I said.
Are hitting.
Me too. Well, Deb, have you been watching anything this week?
Well, Whitney knows a lot of this, but this last weekend, on Friday night, set up for an art show, drove 2.5 more hours south of there, slept in a hotel, woke up, produced a walk for a nonprofit, and drove back to the art show for the remainder of the weekend. And thanks so much, Whitney, for coming out. Her parents came for a little bit. It was really sweet. Her dad was going to bring me a case of water, and they were just really, really sweet.
24 bottles of water. Yeah. He's like, "Do you think she needs this?" I was like, "I think one
so
bottle."
Me and Whitney definitely had a wine slushie and some donuts. It was awesome.
It was good times.
But to say that I was tired yesterday is like an understatement, right? I didn't move from the couch all day. And the last time I actually remember watching TV for hours was when I was prepping for Midnight Mass for the podcast last year.
Oh, yeah.
That's how long it's been since I've like sat down like that. So anywho, I watched 2 episodes of Killer Cakes on Prime, which is hosted by Matthew Lillard, who you might know as Stu from the first Scream movie.
Or Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, he's also Shaggy. He's also on, what is that movie with Freddie Prinze Jr. where he turns the nerd into the prom?
She's All That.
Yeah, he's also on that. He's like the douchey reality star boyfriend. So what's cool about Killer Cakes, though, is that they bring in special effects artists to help the contestants make the cakes like move and be creepy and like vomit and stuff like that.
That's cool.
It was super fun.
Vomiting cake?
Yeah, but the vomit,
board with that.
but the vomit had to be edible and it had to go with the cake. It was really cool.
So it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, it was actually really fun. And Matthew Lillard, who's not like a foodie or anything, it was so cute because every time he'd take a bite, he's like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And then like this guy next to him would be like, "Well, it was a little dry," and Matthew Lillard's like, "Yeah."
That too.
Right. But then to carry on with the spooky vibes, I decided to watch Terrifier, which is also on Prime, to just see what the fuss is all about. The 3rd one just came out in theaters. If you don't know this movie, you definitely know the clown. He is the clown that's all in black and white with a miniature top hat that you see in tons of memes on Bookstagram, the one that smiles. So I have to say, this movie is probably one of the most gory films I have ever seen.
Ew.
Just the way that he slaughters people is beyond messed up. So I mean, will I watch the 2nd and 3rd
I
ones?
was gonna say 5 stars.
Probably. My daughter, though, I had to have her turn her head a few times, and she likes gore. And there was one specific scene where I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening right now."
I don't mind gore, but I can't do clowns.
I mean, here's what makes the movie redeemable is that he's so insane, he's funny. So like he's like brutally murdering this person, and someone walks around the corner and he stops and smiles and waves. And then at one point he's doing like the Shining thing where he's trying to like get into a room through a door, and he has a bicycle horn and he shoves it through the hole and he's like squeezing it at her. So it's like shit like that.
Oh,
but
my
like
goodness.
You didn't like feel good at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like you felt like I had to go watch Gilmore Girls when I was done.
Something funny.
I mean,
something
it
light.
was scary.
Something
for the
actually
record.
breezy.
Right. It's something
scared.
breezy. Yeah.
Your daughter so much that when I walked up and knocked on the door, she got freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
She's like, I forgot they were coming. And she today, when she got home from school, she goes, I thought about it all day. And I was like, I just thought about it just now when you brought it up again. Like, but yeah, it was very sadistically funny, but also very, very messed up.
Yeah.
Would not recommend for people that don't like horror like Saw or things like that. If you want,
No,
it's
thank you.
campy, but it's too gory to really be a campy movie.
thing.
Yeah.
Well,
What are you guys watching?
what you watch, Mindy?
Well, I finished watching Nobody Wants This.
Well, that's different.
And it was...
Oh, it got renewed for a second
I
season.
know, and I'm so excited.
I still
It's
haven't watched
so good. Just watch it. It's amazing.
It's on my list.
Yeah. The good thing about it is it's like 25-minute episodes instead of hour episodes. They're 45 minutes. Yeah. So it's a quick,
Well,
it's a
that's
quick
very
watch.
helpful.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
good to know.
Well, that just moved up on the list.
I know. I thought they were like hour-long episodes.
No, they're like half hour or a little bit less.
Well, that's good to know. Well, I watched one thing this whole week, and it was also on Netflix, but it was a documentary. It's a documentary movie. Shocker. It's called Jailbreak, Love on the Run.
Oh, dear God.
And so this is something that actually happened within the past 3-ish years, and I vaguely remember seeing stuff about this on the news but didn't really know what was going on. So this is a documentary. It's about a jailer in Alabama. She's like this woman is like
I remember this.
in charge of the jail.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yep.
she basically falls in love with one of the inmates and helps him escape.
Yeah,
like
I
that's
remember
the gist
this.
of the
Yeah.
story. So I kind of remembered that, but not really. And of course, there are so many details that you're like, what?
Yeah.
And had no idea any of that stuff was going on. And it was so interesting, and it blew my mind the whole time. I wrote in my notes, most of the time watching, it was like, girl, what were you thinking? Like, what was going on? I do not understand. Like, this is a woman who had worked in a jail for a really long time.
Do you ever wonder, though, like, as fucked up as he is and, like, what she did, like, is he her soulmate?
Well,
is that
you'd have to
why?
watch the documentary
I
for
actually
more
want
thoughts
to
on
now.
that. It was really good. So there's one thing one little detail that they kind of threw in as almost like an aside or like a throwaway comment about something that had happened in her past that for me was like,
this is spoiler friendly. Are you going to watch it, Mindy?
Probably, but I don't know when. It might be a while.
Well, this isn't like a spoiler. It just, to me, it made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
So in recent, I don't know, like within 5 or 10 years of this whole thing happening, she had been engaged to a man who had tragically died in a car accident.
Oh.
And it kind of, I think, like messed her up and she never really like got over it. And I think that's where her mind space was.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, that makes so much sense. Because without that little detail, you're just like, what happened? Like, what's going on?
See, I thought you were going to tell us you watched the Menendez story finally. Because
no, not yet.
I was telling you there were new information about that case.
That's on my list.
Molly has already
but...
watched that. Molly loves true crime. You and Molly need to get together and like watch things like because she'll be like, oh,
it's too bad Molly doesn't read because we could have her on for the final episode of Ruinous Love Trilogy.
But it was very interesting. It does not have a happy ending, just so you know. It's just it's a one episode. It's really a film. It's like a little bit less than an hour and a half. It was a very interesting watch.
Do they both survive or do they die?
It's not a happy ending.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
I mean, not happy ending could also be prison, but, you know.
Well, there's some of that.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, you help an inmate escape.
Right.
It's probably not going to work out.
Not going to end up well.
It's almost like starting a relationship with infidelity. Like it's not the most trusting way to start a relationship.
Yeah. And they've made a documentary about it. So, you know, like they didn't just ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They didn't both just go to white collar
I feel
prison.
like I'd watch a documentary where they ride off into the sunset.
I know. Yeah.
That'd be very different.
It was very, very interesting.
For someone that loves HEAs like you do, I don't know how you listen to so much true crime. You're like, you know what? Fuck you. Like,
well, I didn't remember. I had no idea what had ended up happening because I was like, I remember seeing this. I remember them saying like these people are missing. We're looking for these people, and that's all I remembered. So I had no concept of like what happened ultimately, and then it was kind of like, oh, well, all right then. But that's what I watched. We all said something about what we watched, right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not skipping anybody. What are you guys listening to? Anything good?
I'm listening to music actually this week. I am going to another concert of my favorite band ever, Jukebox the Ghost, and they have an opener, and I like to try to listen to some of the opener songs just to see, like, I mean, maybe if it's not my thing, I won't show up early or whatever. So their opener this week is called Bermuda Search Party, and they're actually really good. They've got like a horn section, like some trumpets and stuff,
horns.
And it's got almost like a ska feel, but not really. I'm really enjoying it. So they're called Bermuda Search Party. There's a link to their Spotify in our show notes. They're pretty fun.
Have you guys seen that meme going around that's like, I thought the Bermuda Triangle was going to be a bigger problem.
100%. And I did too.
I was terrified of it growing up.
I was like, I'm definitely going to get lost in the Bermuda Triangle.
Quicksand or piranhas.
My great uncle disappeared in a small aircraft over the Bermuda Triangle. In
like for real?
Yeah.
Seriously? Wow.
In like 19.
How have we been friends for 1 bajillion years and we didn't know that?
Well, because it happened like way before my mommy was even my mommy was even born. My mommy wasn't even born. But yeah, so there you go.
So apparently when Whitney's had a shot, she really loves her mom.
We've talked at length about my daddy issues. Apparently I have mommy issues.
Your mommy's quite rad, for the record.
She is.
I really love her.
I enjoy her a lot too. Deb, what are you listening to?
So I started listening to The Twisted Throne, which is the 5th book in the Bridge Kingdom series. I talked about that last week. It's already so awesome. And all of Danielle Jensen's female main characters are like complete badasses. There is like no weak woman in her books, which I really, really love. I'm going to talk more about the Bridge Kingdom when we get to our topic too.
Ooh. Well, I'm actually listening to a book too. I didn't exactly know what I was getting into when I started listening to it, but I still really enjoy it. So this is a book called The Art of Small Talk, and it's by 2 comedian writers that are really good friends with each other, Casey Wilson and Jessica St. Clair. They both have podcasts too. They're very, very funny. So I thought this was going to be more humor. but it's literally like a personal development book, like very serious. Like it's very serious.
Are you liking it though?
I really am. It's very serious about small talk, which I kind of thought it might be like fun little vignettes or like stories of their, you know, careers and friendships, but not really. But it's still really good, and it is still funny. So they consider themselves expert small talkers, and they think that small talk and having that skill is super important, and that the world should be better at it.
I would agree with that.
Interesting.
And that's kind of the framework of their whole thing is like, let's talk about why it's important and why people don't like to do it or why people don't do it anymore, and like how you can get better at it.
Well, small talk doesn't have to be the weather.
Right.
It can be an interesting
I think it's
topic.
become,
they talk about too.
I think that's become the cliche. Like,
Yes.
you know.
Like, can you believe how cold it got this week? Like, it doesn't have to be like that.
This makes me sound kind of egotistic, but I will say I think part of the reason I was so good in nonprofit development is because I can do that.
You are
makes
good at
sense.
small
Yes.
talk.
That's not
But I'm
egotistical.
exhausted
That's
at the end
the
of it.
truth.
Still
Yeah.
though, because it's still a lot
Because
of
you're
work.
an introvert.
Right. Yeah.
See, and I'm an introvert who is very bad at small talk because I think it's weird, and I think I'm weird, and I think everybody thinks I'm weird. You know what I mean?
Though, like, let your freak flag fly.
Well, that's kind of what they talk about in the book a little bit. So I listened to this book. I'm like halfway through it. I listened to it on the drive down to the art show, which was in my hometown, which is why my parents were there and why I went.
Whatever. Your
And-
parents just come to all my art shows.
Yeah. And I actually used some of the strategies and tips
Good
that
for
they talked about in the
you.
book, and got the girl that was wearing the Sarah J. Maas shirt.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I really like your shirt, and used some of the small talk stuff and got her into the tent.
Good for you.
And then she bought some stuff. So I was really proud of myself.
Well,
for
thank
that.
you.
That's awesome.
So-
That was part of our wine and donut fund.
It was, yeah. Yeah, but I'm listening to it, and I'm trying to grow and get out
Who
of
wrote
my...
that again? Because I'm very interested.
Casey Wilson and Jessica St. Clair. And they are funny too. And they have a guy, I think it's only an audiobook. They have like Amy Poehler has some random tips that she throws in there. They talk to Colin Quinn and Tony Hale.
Oh, okay.
And they have some random friend of theirs that they're like, he's really bad at small talk. And they're teaching him how to do it. And then at the end of the book, they're going to take him to a kid's birthday party.
I feel like it's like blah, 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 Cloud.
Okay, it's so funny you say that because I think first of all, as I get older, it gets easier for me to like not give a shit.
Yeah.
But also, I think I practice on kids enough.
Yeah.
Because I work in an elementary school, and I do have to like. I don't have to talk to them, but like otherwise it's pretty awkward when you're checking out books and
Yeah,
you know,
it
so I
is.
do try to like connect with the kids, and I think I practice on the kids, and
I
that's
think-
made it a lot
You know what
easier.
she used to do when she first started working there? She'd be like, you want this fucking book?
I'd throw it at them and say, fuck off.
But that corner didn't hit your
I
eye.
did have one kid like this. I will always tell this story. There was one kid that I'll never forget. He was in kindergarten, and I think he was trying to make small talk, and he was like, thank you. Hope you don't lose your job. I was like, do you know something I don't?
He's a principal's nephew.
Oh,
Don't
man,
tell
that's really
Mrs. Jett
funny.
she's going to lose her job.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, that brings us to what we're loving. What are you guys loving this week?
I'm really excited. I'm finally getting a new tattoo this week.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't gotten one in a couple of years, which is rare for me. So if you listen to the podcast regularly, I had talked about how I had illustrated this Frida Kahlo reading a book for another Bookstagrammer, but I took the design and changed it up and made it new for me. So I'm really, really pumped.
Nice.
It's happening in 2 days from now. I have to finish the artwork. It's not quite done yet.
Well,
I've been a
that's
little
exciting.
busy.
Well, you know, as long as it's done-ish, by the time you get
Yeah.
there, it'll be fine.
It's one of those things that does have to be done all the way.
Well, you
Yeah, well,
know,
yeah.
you can
Can't
tell
just
I know
leave. Can't just
nothing.
leave that one unfinished.
Right, yeah.
Just
You done with that tattoo?
fill in the blanks. This is the general gist of it. Mindy, what are you loving?
Well, I think Deb will probably disagree, but I'm loving this fall weather we're having here in
God, I'm
Kentucky.
fucking cold.
I'm cold, but I kind of love it. I don't know.
I do like not sweating.
I love not sweating. That's top priority. But I don't know. It finally feels to me cozy, and like
Me
all
too.
the spooky stuff and all the fall stuff that's coming out. It finally feels like it belongs,
Yeah.
so to speak. It has been a little gray. I will give you that. But otherwise, I love it. I love pulling out my hoodies and,
I can't drink outside as much.
I still drink.
We'll just
outside.
wrap an extra blanket. And And throw a comfy on there.
With the poolside chair.
Yes, exactly. So I'm really excited about the What I'm Loving because it is a story that made me really laugh a lot. This is a true story, and I did get permission to share it. Somebody that I know, they said I didn't have to keep it anonymous, but I feel like I should. So they were having a conversation with their child, who is 10-ish, and this is not me, by the way. This is not me. This is not me and my child.
Asking for a friend.
I would take credit if my child was this funny. So they have been reading a lot of books about athletes, like biographies. And apparently this child has been very scandalized at the idea that all these athletes have kids and they're not married. Like, very scandalized by this. So they keep bringing it up to their mom, like, so-and-so had all these kids and they weren't married. And, LeBron James had all these kids and they were married. And so my friend took this as a teachable moment and is like, well, how that happens, right? And the kid looked at her like, And she was like, we've talked about this before, remember? It's one word. And she said he looked around and like covered his mouth like this and went, hose? And I was like, that is the greatest answer.
The men are hoes, for the record.
Yeah.
We're not going to degrade down the women.
I know. I was like, does he know about Nick Cannon yet?
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Oh, I need to ask her that. Tell him about Nick Cannon.
I can't wait to turn off the recording button so I can find out who this is.
I laughed so much. I was like, that is so funny. Can I please share that on my podcast? And she said, yes, that's fine. But that made me laugh quite a bit. I've been telling everyone about it, and everybody thinks it's funny. So, props to that
if
child.
They don't, they're dead inside.
I know, right? Even Robbie laughed at it. Like, he outwardly laughed, which normally Robbie's like, and that's all you get.
No, Robbie goes, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Sometimes he doesn't even do that. He has the worst reactions. Like when you give him a gift, when
he's
you tell
like
him
the
something
funniest
funny,
person but you have to like listen for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I enjoyed that a lot. Well, that brings us to our nerdiest topic today. We're talking about villain gets the girl or villain gets the guy in some of these recommendations. Again, we're spoiling these books for you guys. So just, be aware of that. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of a villain. The idea of villain gets the girl. Like, why is this even a trope that we're talking about? Because it's different than enemies to lovers, right? An enemies to lovers is not always a villain gets the girl. Sometimes it's like two good people that just didn't like each other for some dumb reason.
Well,
right?
and in some of my recommendations, they weren't enemies anyway. It just turns out he is the villain.
He's just not.
They don't even start out as enemies.
He just, is a little morally black over here. Yeah.
I think what makes a villain desirable is that everyone kind of likes a bad boy and the idea of taming one, right?
Ooh.
Like that idea of like, okay, I'm going to be the one that
cure you with my magic dick.
Yes.
Or magic
pussy.
Pussy.
My gold pussy.
Did you say gold or girl?
Gold.
My girl pussy.
I don't want to know what a boy pussy looks like. For the record.
Oh, that's
probably
hilarious.
like a saggy ball sack.
Do you... My vagina is prettier than a saggy ball sack. Thank you very much.
Well, that's why it's a guy pussy. And not just
I will say, reading Butcher and Blackbird, Sloan always talks about how pretty his dick is.
Yes.
And I'm like, babe...
No, it isn't. Don't lie.
No, it's not.
Anyway, let's get this back on track.
Do you think that all villains are redeemable?
No.
I don't either.
No.
Like, there's a couple hard stops for me, like sexual assault.
Yeah, like Brando Mazine.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about Mazine later during my nerdiest thing. That's so funny. You're bringing up all my stuff. Cheating.
Yeah.
Lying, like, compulsively. Those are all things that, I'm sure there's more non-redeemable stuff out there, but those are the ones for me where I'm like, all right, we're not coming back
But
from
murder's
that.
Okay.
Yeah, murder's fine.
Depends on the context.
Yes.
Is he killing for her?
Only in
Absolutely.
fiction.
In
Only
fiction.
in fiction.
Yeah, in fiction.
Let's talk about some of our recommendations.
I'll go first because all of mine we've already talked about. So if you've been a loyal listener, then you've really heard us talk about all these books. But if you're a new listener, maybe there'll be a new one for you.
And read these books because we love them. That's why we talk about them so much.
One is first one I thought of was King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. So it's Adrian and Isolde, and she's trying to kill him but
They're
he
both
wins
kinda
her over.
villainous.
They really are, which I love. That's what I kind of love about it. They're both sort of morally gray, and then they end up together. I loved that one. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, the Folk of the Air series, Jude and Carden, like he's her bully, but he harbors a crush for her. So I think like we think he's the villain at least, but he's not. Yeah. But I think in the first book, you really believe that he is.
For sure, yeah.
I know you're going to talk about the Plated Prisoner series. I can't believe I looked in your notes that you didn't talk about this one, The Bonds That Tie. If you think about Nox and Oleander.
I thought about that, but, well, anyway. I thought about it and then decided not to.
Well, why would you say no?
Because
you always talk about them?
Well, because I talk about it too much, first of all, but also because kind of the same thing you were just saying about the Cruel Prince. Like, you think these people are villains and then they're not. Yeah. And so
this is probably why I had a hard time with this one for some reason. I don't know if I was telling, we were talking and like I've been reading a lot of like romance, and it is more enemies to lovers, the stuff that I'm reading, and not really villainous. But now I will say the Mortal Fates series by Jay Bree also, that one, so it's witches and like, I guess just fae, maybe? I can't remember if he's fae or not. But anyway, so he wants to eradicate witches, and she is one, but they're fated mates.
Ooh la la.
So that one I feel like, and this series isn't done yet.
Yeah.
But you definitely see where it's going. And then finally, I have the Manacled.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
which I know you all don't think Draco's a villain, but I still think he is.
He is a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I saw that in your show notes, I was like, this bitch better not be talking poorly about this book.
No. I just think it fits the category.
It does. He definitely is a villain. Yeah. In a way, Hermione's a little bit of a villain in that book, too.
I mean, yeah.
They both ultimately do some pretty messed up stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely the bigger one. Don't get me wrong. I would say that maybe Hermione's morally gray in that book, and Draco's morally black.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that, for sure.
He has some remorse for what he does, but not tons.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree. Good job, Mindy. Yeah. You were right. We concur. Well, I'll go ahead and share mine too. So Nelson County, sorry.
You were in Bardstown.
I was going to say, you spent a little too much time in Bardstown.
I was in Bardstown all weekend. No, I have three that I kind of put all in the same category. So I've got From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I kind of all put those together because they all kind of have the similar vibe, right? So like they're all romantasy books, first of all. They are all set in that kind of medieval style time period. What do we call those? Gaslight
fantasy.
Gaslight fantasy. They are all completely unique worlds to those books. They're their own universes. They all feature a female main character that starts the series off as kind of cornered and not yet realizing how strong and powerful she really is. And then throughout the series, the female main characters and other female secondary characters too kind of grow into their strength. And it's really fun to read and great to see. And so all three of those series have really great character growth for all of the characters, including the secondary ones. They all have great spice, swoony book boyfriends, and then you really fall in love with the secondary characters in all three of these book series, I feel like, and not just the main couple, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they all have villain gets the girl.
I have to say something about From Blood and Ash. I suggested it to my friend Tori. This is the mom from where I work.
Yeah.
So I suggested it to her. She hadn't read it yet. And I was like, oh my gosh, you've read Akatar? You haven't read From Blood and Ash? Like, I feel like everybody has read them both, but maybe they haven't. Yeah. So anyway, so she comes up to me. I suggested it to her on Friday, and she came up to me today and said, I'm halfway through From Blood and Ash. She's like, am I going to get Tamlined? She's like, I feel like Hawk is going to be a Tamlin. I'm like, just keep reading.
Yeah, there are a lot of people
about to get Castile.
Yeah,
yes,
there are a lot of people that haven't heard of From Blood and Ash.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was
a lot
odd.
of people. For those three series, The Plated Prisoner is a completed series. From Blood and Ash will be completed, sadly, next year. The last book focusing on that main couple will come out. And, maybe Akatar at some point will get another book. I don't know. We'll see about that. So those were the three I put kind of like in the romantasy. And then I have two more that are really much more villain gets the girl, because those romantasy books I feel like are kind of like what you were saying with Bonds That Tie and Cruel Prince. Like you think these people are villains and then you find out more about them and you're like, oh, well, this makes sense. These other two that I'm going to talk about are way more like, no, they're villains. So the Broken Bounty series by Ember Nicole. The first one is called Break For Me. So basically, first of all, very dark romance. Read your triggers. This is a hitman who is hired to deliver a woman to his employer for some unknown reason, but probably because she's going to get murdered. But sparks fly, guys. Can you believe? And the real...
Can you?
I wrote, the real prize is the friends we make along the way. But no, they fall in love with each other. And both of these main characters are very flawed while still being people that you root for and that you like want to get together, even though you're like, you guys are terrible people. Go ahead and kiss, you know? Like,
there's a lid for every pie.
Yeah, exactly. The spice is really, really great. Ember Nicole's books are notorious for being major cliffhangers. So just keep that in mind as you read her books.
Cliffhangers.
I do too.
They're always pretty fantastic cliffhangers. So just be aware of that. And then the other dark romance writer that I really like for Villain Gets the Girl is Elle Mitchell. Elle, we have talked about her, friend of the podcast before. She's so good at writing very flawed characters that you can't help but love. And basically all of her main characters, I would say, are all morally gray / morally black. Like none of them are really like good people when it comes down to it. I think this is especially true of her newest duet that you talked about earlier, the Gods of Tomorrow series. Broken Reverie is a really good one that has morally questionable leads. There is some infidelity in that book, but somehow you still like want them to get that happy ever after.
I know.
But those Elle Mitchell's really, really good at that villainous person that you still like want to be happy. Like everyone deserves happiness. And then last but not least, this one's very different from all of these. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab.
I had that one too.
Yeah, it's very different from these other books. It's not really a romance. It's kind of fantasy. It's kind of paranormal. It's got some romance in it, but it's just it's kind of its own genre. I don't even know how I would describe it. But Addie is a young girl way back in olden times who makes a deal with the devil, basically, to escape a forced marriage. But her deal comes with a price. Everyone who meets her forgets that she ever existed as soon as they leave the room. So she spends basically eternity alone for a little while. So this one is not a happily ever after.
I was going to ask if you thought it was. I don't think it is.
It's not a happily ever after, which I know is shocking for me, but I still think about this book all the time.
Horribly, but
no, it's not a terrible ending, but it's not really a happy ending, and I think about it a lot.
It's everything is fine for right this second type of ending.
Yeah, but it's a really good book. It's very different than anything I've ever read, and I think it's worth reading just for that because it's so unique.
Oh yeah.
So those were mine.
Well, I also have 3 categories. Mine are Villain Gets the Girl, Villain Gets the Guy, and the book where the villain should have gotten the girl that I'm still pissed off about. So
missed opportunity.
Let's talk about Villain Gets the Girl first. So the first book I want to talk about is Destroy the Day by Bridget Kemmerer. We have talked about her a lot on the podcast. She's also been on for an interview. She's a YA author, even though she's working on her first adult book. And this book has a vigilante working with a network of spies to get medicine to the poor of the kingdom. And that like sounds great, right? But the vigilante who wears a disguise is also the prince of the kingdom that's keeping the medicine under wraps.
Ooh.
So it's got like, and like you said, like, is he actually the villain?
Right.
Maybe not,
Yeah. Let's find out more.
This next person is definitely a villain, and I want to talk about What Lies Beyond the Veil by Harper L. Woods. And our man Callum, oh my God, he's so hot. But he will do anything to get to his fated mate, including lying, kidnapping, forging an identity, and falsifying the location for which he and his mate are heading. Like, he lies about everything. Everything. So much so that it kind of becomes like unreliable narrator type of thing, which is kind of fun. Next, I want to talk about The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This awesome book is the one that you've hopefully heard about, but it's where vampires meet Hunger Games. And it has a boyfriend who starts as the enemy, becomes a super hot lover, and then goes right back into enemy territory all on his own. And he does it on purpose. So,
who wrote that one?
Carissa Broadbent. Thank you for saying that. And also, I want to talk about Belladonna. And this is a book where she's in love with death. And you can't really have a bigger villain than that.
No,
it's
you
kind
can't.
of like Addie LaRue, because he's kind of like the devil, isn't he? I don't think he's death. He's like supposed to be the devil. But as it turns out, I'm a bigger fan of stories where the villain gets the guy. Because I was writing these down and I was like, oh, that's where the chick is bad. The chick's bad. The chick's bad. The chick's bad. So let's first chat about the Book of Azrael. The female lead in the series is Diana, who is really my current favorite main character. She is morally black and again will do anything, and I mean anything, for the people she loves. She feels everything and therefore makes everyone else suffer when they hurt her. Like, she doesn't have an outlet for everything that she feels. Right. The next book in this category is Heartless Hunter. The female lead in this book is a witch who's wreaking havoc in the city by stopping the witch collectors from doing their job. You could say that the male and female are both villains in this book, but she gets hers, and I can't wait for the second book in the series, which actually comes out in February.
I know.
I didn't realize it was so soon. Yeah. So I mentioned this earlier that I wanted to talk about the Bridge Kingdom. I've talked about this series a lot on this podcast. Like, I really wish one of you two would read it. I'm just saying. In this book,
girl, I haven't even read Iron Flame yet.
Well, that's cool because Onyx Storm comes out in like 3 months.
I know. I've already pre-ordered it. It's going to sit on my shelf. The Iron Flame.
Okay, so anyway, the Bridge Kingdom. It's about a female assassin who is tasked with making the king of a rival kingdom fall in love with her so that her father can brutally invade the lands. But of course, like, you know, sparks fly and all that shit, like Whitney said.
Yeah.
And she is a villain who is very redeemable, but it takes a few books, which I really like. Like, they don't forgive her right away because she, like a lot of people, die because of her actions in that book. So, but she's just a really cool, strong character. And finally, in this category, and this is a mafia romance, it's called The Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. And this book really has two villains. They're both in rival mafia families who are forced to marry, but the female lead is just deliciously malicious in the most hilarious ways. Like, the way that she tries to kill him is so funny. So funny. But then, you know, again, like, they kind of fall for each other, which is fun. Sparks fly.
You know what? I never thought about it, but I guess technically Sarah and Niktos, the villain, gets the guy, because we don't think of her because she had so much trauma in her life.
But she is the villain.
But she is the villain. She's the one out to kill him. And then there is that whole moment where nobody likes her because they find out that she was supposed to kill him.
Right.
I
do feel like they do kind of forgive her fairly quickly.
They do.
Like,
some of them do.
Laura in the Bridge Kingdom has to really work for it. She has to do. There's a lot of action behind, and I mean, there's still, even in the 5th book that I'm reading right now, people that are like, we don't fucking trust you.
Yeah.
So, which I think is really interesting because it's what it would actually be like.
Yeah,
right.
It's real.
Danielle Jensen's a very good author. So the last rec that I want to talk about is the one where I said the villain should have gotten the girl.
Yeah.
And this is Shadow and Bone, talking about my man, the Darkling. Lee Bardugo, you did us wrong. Wrong. So wrong by having Elena end up with that motherfucker Mal.
I know.
He did not appreciate Elena. He, like, didn't believe in her powers. He never stood up for her. And I just wanted to punch him in the fucking throat.
Yeah,
I want to point out that his name means bad.
Oh, that's so true. I never thought about that.
You're not helping my point.
That's
God.
so true.
But I know. That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay, so the Darkling needed therapy, like a lot of therapy. But he at least really liked Elena for who she was. And Mal, like, she gives up her powers. And it even is talking about at the end of the book about how she misses them. And Mal's like, well, it sucks to suck. Come here and kiss me. I fucking hate that guy.
You may not have your powers, but at least you got this dick.
Where Lara Buckheight's A Realm of Ash and Shadow goes, because I think that could be one where the villain gets the girl, but I'm not sure. And if it ends up like that, it's either going to be the villain gets the girl or the villain maybe should have gotten the girl. I don't know.
She posted like a little snippet the other day, and I posted like, where's Vimdower? And she's like, I was looking for him too. And I was like, oh, Laura. But yeah, I mean, I didn't realize, because a lot of times when I prep for the podcast, I'll like go through my Goodreads and stuff. And I literally was sitting in my book room as I was prepping and like had to narrow down where the villain gets the girl. I think it's just a trope I really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
I like seeing I don't think it always has to be a redeemable character. Like you said, like Draco Malfoy in Manacled, he does redeem himself a little bit, but you don't really still think he's a good person in the end, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, he doesn't think he's a good person.
You understand,
but he's coming from. But he's still a horrible person.
It's not really like forgivable necessarily.
Right. And so I was looking at my shelves and I was like, oh, I read a lot of this.
Yeah.
Well, I think you read a lot more dark romance than we do, and I think that
a lot of dark fantasy too.
Definitely a trope that you see more often in that.
The dark ones.
Sure. Yeah. I would say that too. And I was looking at like what I've read this month, and it's been so much dark romance.
That's why I was just telling Mindy a book. I read a book that she has read that I'll talk about next week, and it was fine, but it was just like, you complete me. It's always been
it was
you.
too nice.
Yeah, and I told Mindy, I was like, just like choke her a little bit. Give me something, you know? Anyway,
I just read...
I like that trope too, is what I'm saying.
I read, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this last week on the podcast because I had read some other stuff too, and if we talked about every book that we all three of us have read, it would be a never-ending podcast. But I had read Vipers and Virtuosos, and it's dark romance, but it almost like wasn't dark enough. That's my criticism. It's like she's ruined his life in some way, and I don't want to say how, because it is still a good book and good writing. But he kind of starts stalking her later, like she fakes her death and all this stuff. And it starts out where you're like, dude, you're fucking insane. But then too quickly, he like backs off. And I'm like, I needed him to be a little bit crazier.
Yeah. To be truly dark.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the one thing that she writes about he does is pretty fucking gross. But I finished it and I was like, that's it? Now they like each other?
Maybe that says more about us. Than it does about the
Mindy and I both said pussy earlier, so I mean, we got Whitney to take a shot. So
a victory for the day, right? Well, that brings us into our nerdiest thing of the week. And really mine is the small talk thing. The small talk that I used those tips.
I really love that. I love that you're doing that for yourself because I know that you've always really struggled. Like, even at your kid's birthday party, you're like, don't come talk to me.
No, I didn't say don't come talk to me. I just said I'm really awkward. I'm bad at small talk and I'm a very awkward person. That's what I said.
This year at the birthday
and they heard don't come talk to me.
Yeah. This year at the birthday party, you're going to go, I read a book on it and I'm still uncomfortable with it. But if you want to come over, I'll tell you I like your shirt.
Yeah, I just want to learn.
Let me tell you about small talk.
I think we can always improve ourselves.
I do too.
Yeah.
One time my husband and I got in a fight and he's like, why do you always have to be trying to fucking do better? Because I'm a very competitive person.
Yes.
Well, I ended up doing the small talk stuff and ended up talking about the you take my daddy, I'll take yours in front of my mom.
When you said that the other day, I didn't realize she was standing there.
That is hilarious.
And then she took a real big step away.
Did she say anything?
Well, no, I said, my mom's right there. And she was like, I won't listen. I was like, oh my gosh, Mom. But that's okay. She borrowed.
And your dad was like, here, have some water.
No, he wasn't there, or he would have like made a big scene about it and thought that it was hilarious. But my mom did borrow one of my Tessa Bailey books, so she knows what I read.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, please don't tell me what you thought about
this.
I
don't want to know. Don't ruin it for me.
Whitney's dad, who I've met dozens of times, like before Whitney got to the art show the other day, her mom walks up and like starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh, where's dad, right? And she goes over there, and he is looking around going, where's Deb? Who are you talking to right now? And your mom goes, Deb is who I'm talking to
right now.
And she had that like roll her eye moment of like, dude, hilarious. Like, fucking pay attention.
Yes. Yeah.
It was really cute though.
That's kind of how he rolls. Like, hello, this is what we're doing. And he's like, huh? What? I was like, all right, thank you.
I don't remember talking about this 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. What are your all's nerdiest things of the week?
Mine was researching something called phantosmia. I think that's how you say it.
Ooh, it sounds sexy.
Well, it's not. Unfortunately.
Why were you researching this?
So, when you're sitting there thinking like, what is wrong with me? I was, and then you start like Googling stuff and then you realize that there is actually something like it validates you, right? So I'm sitting there and
I don't know. Last time I Googled something, it told me I had cancer.
No, it's not that bad. So I had this weird thing for like several weeks now where I would smell cigarette smoke or ash but there's nobody. I'm like, it would be at school or at my house where nobody smokes, right? And so I'm like, why am I smelling this? This is so weird. And it is actually a thing. It's called phantosmia. It's the sensation of smelling something, and it's usually unpleasant that isn't actually there. And it can be, I found out, a side effect of anxiety, check, migraines, check, and allergies, check. It's quite annoying. So I either smell...
you like smell cake or something.
Yeah.
I know, right? Like
Freshly
I either
baked
smell like cigarette smoke, or it's really more like an ashtray is what it feels like. It smells like in my nose. Or it smells like mulch. You know what I'm talking about? When that like gross, like poopy smell
So
of
here's
mulch.
the difference between you and I would be like, well, where's the ghost?
I thought you were going to say like, so
It's
I have a ghost attached to me.
phantosmia. It's actually called, what is it called? Phantom hallucination, or like olfactory hallucinations.
Interesting.
My olfactory bulbs
Those
are fucked
olfactory
up.
bulbs.
You can tell people your nose hallucinates, but you don't.
Right? So anyway, yes, you've learned something for the day.
That is so interesting.
It was very
Well,
weird,
I hope
but
that goes away.
it was very validating though. I was like, okay,
sure.
so like I'm not going crazy. Like I really thought like
I'm
my
like,
brain...
I don't smell. I have phantosmia.
Isn't that so weird that combination of anxiety and migraines and allergies?
Yeah.
Like that's just such a strange combo.
I don't know. It's very strange.
Well.
That's the way the brain works though.
Yeah. It's weird that an anxiety can make you smell something that isn't there.
And
That's
it's usually,
crazy.
and what threw me off was that it is usually cigarette smoke. So I thought like that, this is such a weird thing to smell.
really is, yeah.
Right. And I'm thinking, I thought it might be like related to my dad passing away because my dad was a smoker. So I thought, well, maybe I'm having this weird, like, I don't know, trauma response or something. But no, it is a thing. And it's usually, they say that the bad smell is cigarette smoke smell.
That is so interesting.
odd.
Yeah. That's very...
Yeah.
And now I want to research this. It's a rabbit hole to go down there.
It is. I definitely went down that rabbit hole.
On something not as cool as that.
I don't know if it's cool. It's very annoying.
So I have been listening to the From Blood and Ash dramatized version, like on and off, and just got to the part of the book where we meet Lord Mazine for the first time.
No.
You all, I swear, Jennifer L. Armentrout must listen to the podcast because this guy, no shit, sounds just like the infamous worm with a mustache. Tom
Really?
Sandoval.
No way.
Yes. And if you listen to our From Blood and Ash episodes, listeners, you know that that's who we fan cast as that piece of shit character.
I'm shocked that it wasn't him.
Right, yeah. So they just made him sound like a piece of shit human, but it sounds so much like him that it took me out of the book.
Oh my god!
Where I was
so
like, oh my
weird.
god. Oh my! So you gotta wonder though
It's like,
sometimes.
Dude Tierman, dude.
Right.
Dude.
Because I did put those memes of him that you had made in her group. And so you do have to wonder if they were like, he kind of sounds like
He does
Tom
sound like
Sandoval.
that,
Because everyone in her JLA group was like, oh my God, that's so Lord Mazine. But it like literally was so weird. It sounded just like him.
Oh, that's
I
crazy.
think that means she definitely listens to
Absolutely.
this
I
podcast.
hope she does.
That's canon now in my brain.
She's very sweet. I really
Yeah.
love her.
Well, guys, that is it for today's episode. Stay tuned. This coming Thursday is going to be our first episode talking about Leather and Lark. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.